Okay, so I want you to think back to the year 1999, maybe early 2000s. The show was really popular, and you may have a really specific memory or specifically a sound that comes up when you see this image. And we've all lived through different before and after times. You may have lived through before cell phones and after cell phones, back when you could just leave the house with cash and a map and you were in the world, right? Um, Maybe you lived through, the fax machine or email or computers, right? So many of you may live through kind of the cell phone wave, and we are in one of these big paradigm transitions right now. We are currently, right now, in the transition from the before the AI times to the after the AI times. And we may even look back with nostalgia at a world that didn't have AI in all of our tools and always listening and always prompting us and always adding little tweaks. These tools, this is going to get integrated probably into a lot of the stuff we're already using. And so we may look back and wonder what it was like, remember what it was like. Because I think, like these other big paradigm shifting technologies, the world is never going to be the same from this. Pandora's box is open. Humans have fundamentally invented something new. Like, just let that sink in. Humans have invented something new. And this new thing we invented, generative AI, is extremely powerful and extremely influential. And it's kind of like nothing we've ever invented before. And I want to explain why I think AI is just the biggest deal, right? Why it's maybe more impactful than a lot of the other things that we've invented as humans. For all of human history, language was exclusive to humans, which means every time you had a phone call, a conversation, text messages, except maybe a couple chat bots that were really bad, or just screaming on to the Amazon representative just into the text system like representative, right? Just trying to get a human on the line. Because language was exclusive to humans, it means every time you had any sort of communication, it was intrinsically a human to human communication, right? And we use language for how we share information, for how we share how we're feeling, for how we communicate our ideas, and how we build our culture. And the most wild thing about AI to me is that just changed. And for the first time, computers just interjected themselves into the system that we use to build our society, right? And we are influenced by language. Right? That's why copywriters exist. That's why marketing exists. That's why advertising exists, which means AI will influence our society. And I was thinking about this presentation in particular, and I made a few tweaks based on the survey results and who's in the audience. And I added these next two slides, which I've never talked about before, but just hit me while I was driving. This also means, this is the most important thing I'll say all day. So if you take one thing away, take this thing away. Control of AI will mean access to power and influence in the future. Controlling AI and using AI will mean you have access to power and influence, because AI will influence humans and will influence our society. So you kind of need to know, what does this mean for you individually? What does this mean for your work? And we kind of need to be thinking about, what does this mean for society? Because will this be better, the AI revolution, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line? Or will this be worse? Right? Will it be better? Will it be worse? And I think, like most paradigm shifting technologies that we've lived through, right? Like social media, how did that turn out for us, right? There's some good things. There were some things that didn't work out for us. And I think, like that, it will be both. I think we will have elements of AI that are for the better, and we'll have elements that are worse. And so today's goal is to understand, what can AI really do today? What does potentially the future of work look like? What new security and risk threats and ethical questions do we need to consider that we've never had to consider before in our lives? And what are the next steps you can take with AI to start to learn how to use this technology? And really, my goal is to help you take that next step in your AI journey. We're all on this, right? There's no avoiding it. It's just like you couldn't imagine running your life or your business right now without your cell phone and email and the internet. If you just were like, I'm done with that tech, it'd be really hard to operate. I think in the future, it's going to be the same way with AI, where we're kind of forced to use it for better and for worse. And so we're all on this transition of getting on board into this technology. It's getting pushed down by large governments and by tech companies. And so it is coming. And so we're all going to need to take steps. And so the thing we're specifically talking about here is we're really talking about generative AI. I'm going to ignore machine learning and some previous AI. This is the new thing that's new, right? And let's talk about what it can do right now. So I'm going to use a bunch of AI, live demonstrations, and just so you know, because it's generated, a lot of these demonstrations, like I've run a lot of them before, and it's also going to generate stuff. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen in these demonstrations. And so the first tool that I want to show you is called Deep Research. So Deep Research is a tool built within ChatGPT. There's other versions of it in Perplexity is another tool that people use for deep research. Gemini is now getting deep research tools. And to turn it on, I'm going to hit this little kind of telescope button down here, and it's going to switch to get a detailed report. Instead of ask anything, it says get a detailed report, and it says research here. And so let's do a research project. And the reason I start with this first is it takes about 15 minutes, so we'll come back and revisit it. So I'm going to hit my little microphone button here. I'm going to talk to the computer, which is, I do a lot of, and I'll talk more about that. I need to do a deep research project to understand what specific legislation has passed in the year 2025 in the state of Ohio and how that legislation is going to affect different groups. I want to understand how it's going to affect local small and medium-sized businesses. I want to understand how it's going to affect nonprofits, and I want to understand how it's going to affect local governments. And let's also, for each of these different legislations that you find, let's also look for ways that it may affect marginalized communities that are already predisposed to, they need some help as well. So I'm not looking for things on healthcare related. Actually, let's include healthcare. We'll avoid zoning laws. So we don't want anything to do with zoning laws. So I'm telling it what I want. I talked for 53 seconds, and it's going to dictate that and turn it. And the way that deep research works is instead of just going out and doing it immediately, it's going to ask me some follow-up questions. So I'll answer those questions as well. Should I only look for legislation that's been passed and signed in 2025? I'll say yes to that. There are particular sectors: taxation, labor laws, education, criminal justice, environmental. Would you like to organize by legislative bill? So I'll answer these questions real quick. Yes, I only want to look for legislation specifically in Ohio that's been passed in 2025. I do want to look at taxation and labor laws. Let's ignore education and criminal justice, but let's also look at environmental regulation. And then the way I want this report generated is I want it like a McKinsey style report, and I want each piece of legislation to be correlated to each of these different impact sectors, and also give it a score 1 through 10 on how big of an impact it's going to be, and then give a justification for that score as well. So those are all my instructions. It's going to go off and do internet research and synthesize all this material and bring it back into a report that can range anywhere from like 5 pages to 25 pages, depending on what type of research it's doing and what it's bringing back. So hopefully my dictation works here. And maybe. There we go. So I'll hit start, and we'll let that run in the background for a few minutes while we move on to the next thing. So it's going to just make sure it's pulling up its research. So it's starting the research, and we will keep going. So that's deep research. You can research anything. You can research best practices on something. You can research specific people and get like backgrounds on maybe what they've done, and get 1-page summaries of who they are and what's important to them. So you can do it for all sorts of research. Question coming in: how do you tell it not to hypothesize or hallucinate? We will talk about hallucination. I mentioned that in the email. Hallucination is when AI makes something up. Deep research does a better job at not hallucinating because it's actually going to pull sources and then cite those sources, and then I can check those sources. So deep research is a little bit better. I'm not sure if Copilot does have the same feature or not built in yet. Okay, another easy use case, and I'm a proponent of more boring is better when it comes to AI. Sure, you can do creative things and you can make art and you can make music, but I mostly focus on kind of like boring business cases, writing grants, finding grants, standard operating procedures, things um, that are kind of technical and kind of boring and kind of annoying to actually type out. So I'm going to create a new chat. And actually, I'm going to pull up a pre-existing SOP writer that I've written. This is a custom GPT or a custom assistant, AI assistant, that is designed to write SOP. So all you have to do is talk into it what you want, and then it will organize that information into your standard operating procedure. So I'm going to talk to it again. I'll maybe give it another 2 minutes of monologue to describe everything that's in my head, and I'm just going to be making this up. I need to create a new onboarding standard operating procedure for a new employee at my business. And so what we need to do is we need to first notify the managers the day before that they'll be arriving and what their start time is going to be so that the manager can greet them at the door. After they have the first 30-minute onboarding one-on-one with their manager, they then go over to IT. IT needs to issue their actual laptop to them physically. And then their email should already be all set up and access to SharePoint. And so they'll need instructions on how to log in, given their name and password, and then show them exactly how to log in. We want to always invite that new employee to lunch with that manager again. So we need to coordinate that. That's paid for by the company. We want to have a team meeting with all the team after lunch so that they can introduce themselves. And then we're going to start integrating them into the project management system at 2:00, usually that first day. So I'm just kind of riffing and kind of making this up, but this is where like your domain expertise, like what actually goes into your standard operating procedure. Like oftentimes there's somebody at your organization that knows how to do the thing, right? And they've done it for a long time. And they could talk about it all day. And if you ask them to write up an operating procedure, they may not do that. It may be of whatever quality, but they can talk about it. And if you can record that or have them talk to the AI, then they can just create the standard operating procedure from that dictation. So if you make a lot of standard operating procedures or evacuation plans or kind of technical instructions, this can be a great tool for turning your dictation into that operating procedure. Okay, another example, instant grant reporting dashboard. So I'm going to do a different tool that you've maybe all heard of before called Canva. Canva is a great design tool, but they just have some new AI features. They have lots of new AI features, but one of them is a way to code and create custom interactive websites and digital dashboards. So I'm going to, again, talk to it and tell it exactly the digital dashboard I would want for grant reporting. I need to make a grant reporting website that allows me to input the number of volunteers that we've had in the last 30 days and the number of volunteer hours. I'd like to visualize that data in a few different formats. I also want to have an input where I can say the number of participants that we've had an impact on and the total dollar value of resources distributed to those participants, and also the effect of the amount of childcare in number of hours that we've enabled through our programming. So I'm telling it I want to make this digital dashboard. I'm not giving it a lot of details. And what it's going to do is it's going to start writing anywhere from 150 to 500 lines of code. And so it's going to start going here. And it will try to follow my instructions to create this digital live dashboard. So this can be great for displaying information if you have impact studies. I work with a lot with nonprofits, so I'll be referencing nonprofit work a fair amount. But anytime you want to be able to visualize information, and really what this does is it allows you to make not only report what it is you're doing and the impact you're having, but also be able to make decisions based on data much easier because you can visualize that data and then also do projections because you can build out custom digital dashboards to do finance projections or any sort of projections you would need. Oh, that's much faster than it's been. Okay, so here's our digital dashboard. So I can change the number of volunteer hours in the last 30 days and it will update let's make it 200 hours, update my visualization, total number of hours, resources. And down here, I've got some 200 active, some other dashboard stuff. So resources per participant, it automatically did that calculation, childhood care hours. So that took about 30 seconds, and you can go back and kind of do a revision process to make this be actually what you want. So those are three kind of high-level ways to use AI. So researching things, going and getting information. In fact, let's check on that deep research project and maybe it's done. It's looked at 13 sources. Someone said, does AI pull from the internet published information? So this is pulling from internet information. There's also ways with a tool called Google Notebook LM where you can put in only your information and say only do research on all of these research papers or all of these grant opportunities, and it will only go and look in those and not the broader internet as a whole. So that's a different tool if you want to keep it more consolidated to your specific information that you want to upload to it. So we'll check back on that in a little bit, but for now we'll keep on moving. So one of the super important aspects of using AI, and this is the thing I just keep coming back to, is it is more important than ever that you're using your judgment as AI unfolds. And the more I use it, the more I become convinced that critical thinking is never going to go out of style. In fact, I think it's going to be more important than ever. And that is because we need to be intentional about where we adopt this technology. And we also need to be intentional about where we set boundaries. One personal boundary I've set for myself is if I'm writing a handwritten card, I don't use AI. That is just coming from like my heart and my brain. I did it one time and I was like, I hate this and I'm not doing that again. I just set that boundary right there. But being able to set those intentions and set those boundaries means you need to know a little bit about the technology, and to know about the technology, you have to use it some. You can show up to webinars like this one, but that's only going to help you kind of take steps to get started. Eventually, you're going to have to start to use it so you can understand what it is and really how it works. There's a second reason, though, that I think is even more important about why critical thinking is so important. And that is because I think really using AI effectively requires critical thinking. AI can just generate, right? It can just, but what's good, right? What is that thing it made? How is it what you wanted? Does it serve your needs? Is it actionable? Does it communicate the information that you need? That requires you to critically think about what you're looking at. And this is what I come back to. I teach this in every single workshop that I do. This is the most important thing about AI. AI doesn't know what good is. It doesn't actually have very good judgment. And I've seen this come up over and over, and sometimes in scary ways. We'll talk about some ethical stuff as we get into this. AI doesn't know what good is, but you do. And so it's your job when using AI to determine and use your judgment to determine, is the thing good? And if it's not good, how can you give it feedback to make it towards good? And if you have no idea even what good looks like say I'm writing a patent and I don't know how to write a patent, well, I'm going to look at that as not an expert at all. And I'm going to say, well, it looks good to me as somebody who doesn't know anything. And then maybe I go show it to a patent lawyer and like, oh, this is garbage. This just says nothing. This would be embarrassing to submit to the patent office. So you either need to know what good looks like, or you need to get somebody that does. So I want to give just a quick introduction to myself so you know who's talking to you. My name's Kevin Harden, and I'll just give you my really quick 60-second kind of intro of my career. I've had a kind of a wild, winding career. I've always been building stuff, and I thought, okay, well, how do I get to build more stuff? I go to engineering school. And so I did that. I went to Ohio University, and then I became a 3D design engineer where I was making medical parts and aerospace components. I know a lot about this part on the right that is the linear actuator. Like, I know a lot about that one part. I did that for 7 years, and then I went back to school. I got a master's in education. And became a STEM teacher. And I really focused on building really creative learning experiences for my students. And also the thing I specialized in was building kits for students to build with. That was the thing I really liked to do. So I built all sorts of different educational tools that I would bring into the classroom, and then we would build stuff with. So this is a bridge. This is a project I did with a student that's a earthquake-proof version of Stark Tower. And then I took all those experiences. COVID hit. Education was not a good business to be in, so I started to be a professional inventor. So I worked on making public art installations. This is a infinity mirror that's about 10 feet up in the air that I worked with an artist with. Medical devices, kind of just anything people would want me to invent. I would help them go through the prototyping process. All that experience brought me to 3D printed housing, so setting up big robot systems, huge 3D printers, either printers the size of the house or this one, which is an industrial robotic arm, and you print in small modular sections, and then you ship it on site and you assemble it. So I'm still doing some work in that area, but we made planters and small buildings and architectural elements. And that led me, I was thinking about, what am I building? What am I doing? What impact am I making? And just looking around the world and thinking, like, we have a lot of problems that we need to solve. So wherever you're at on whatever spectrum, I think we can all agree that there's some challenges ahead of us. And I'm just thinking, how do I help? So my mission with AI is to amplify the positive impact of others by empowering them with ethical adoption of AI. And so that's what I do now. I work with nonprofits and organizations that have some sort of social mission to help them use these tools to stay more relevant, to grow their business, to reduce burnout, to use these tools to amplify the positive impact that they're making. So that's me. What does AI really even do? And how does it specifically apply to businesses and nonprofits? So let's do another quick demonstration. I'm going to ask for money from a supporter. I'm going to pretend to be a nonprofit, and I'm going to ask for some money. So I'm going to say, this is a fundraising email writer that I have already written. It's a custom AI assistant. And I'm going to say, I want to write a fundraiser email to someone named Kevin, and my organization is called AI for Social Good, and we're empowering nonprofits to use AI to. The fundraising campaign we're having is to get people into a quick start program. The funds are going to sponsor one person, and we've been able to save 65% of time on tedious tasks. This is to a specific person, so that's the audience, and we need a donation by this Friday to get the next cohort started. So I tell it what I want. I talk for 37 seconds, and we will see what it creates. Although the dictation feature is moving a little slower. Okay, so it dictated what I said. Here's my email. All right, there's my link. There's me. I'm going to copy and paste this and say, go ahead and just put it into my email. And we'll hit send, right? Look, I can save so much time. So much time saved, right? Everything's about efficiency these days. But who maybe feels uncomfortable with that approach, right? And I do this demonstration to show this is not the way to use AI, and also to talk about a new important concept that is new to AI, and that's called human in the loop, right? And what human in the loop does, which is different than expert in the loop. We'll talk about that. A human in the loop is at the end of an output before it gets sent out to somebody, before it gets published, or before you're going to use that in whatever you're going to use it for, that somebody checked it, somebody read it and improved it. Somebody put their name on it and said, yes, I think that is a good thing to do or a good thing to send. I want to avoid, especially for public facing things, of just randomly letting AI represent me. And so with human in the loop, the more sensitive the information, the more intervention and checking that humans need to do. And so we can build these into these systems that they get checked before they get sent out. I mentioned expert in the loop. Expert in the loop happens at the other side. So human in the loop is the end where we're training and we are checking. Sorry, at the end where we're checking. And expert in the loop happens at the beginning where we are training the AI systems. So the next example I want to show is creating a continuity plan. That was brought up in the planning call. Everybody's getting really frustrated with all these continuity plans, right? And about an hour ago, I was kind of prepping for this. I was like, I don't really know exactly what a continuity plan is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a continuity plan. Actually, we'll just go to ChatGPT. We'll just go blank here. So I'm just going to go to a standard new ChatGPT conversation. And I'm going to say, I've been tasked with making a new continuity plan, and I don't know what that is. So I need just a really brief overview, and then I need you to ask me 5 questions that I would need to answer to even start to make a continuity plan. Okay, so it's going to ask me some information. What most critical functions and services must you keep running no matter what? What kinds of events or disruptions are most likely to impact operations? Who are the key people and roles? Okay, so I'm going to make up some answers. This is, again, where you would have domain expertise on your actual answers of these. And I'll see if it can continue to help me make this continuity plan. One of the most critical functions that we have is keeping our servers up. And so that means we are sensitive to floods and cyber attacks and fire. We host currently our own servers, and we're transitioning over to more cloud-based services. But since we run critical infrastructure, it's critical that the servers are always kept running. So we need to make contingency plans for those risk factors. We'll just start there. So I didn't answer all the questions, and we'll see what it comes up with. It may ask me more questions. It may just try to draft it. I really don't know what's about to happen. So this is a different way to use AI. So a really simple way to use AI is to tell it what you want it to do, right? And what I'm demonstrating here is kind of the next level up, where I'm asking it to teach me something and asking it to ask me questions, right? Which is different than me just dictating one direction and telling it what to do. So it's more of an iterative back and forth process. So I don't feel like reading all this, so we're not going to, but I am going to say, I want you to answer all of your own questions as best you can, and then I want you to write a full contingency plan for me to review. So that's another technique I'll sometimes do, where I'll say, ask me a bunch of questions, and I just tell it to answer its own questions. But again, remember, I need to use my critical thinking and my judgment to determine, is what it's making actually good for me? Is it what I want? Is it actionable? Am I willing to put my name on this and go to somebody and say, here's what I created for the contingency plan? So let this run for a few minutes and see what it comes up with. In the meantime, let's revisit our legislation impact research. So what I'm going to do here, these are all cited. You can see the links. I can go to these individual links where it's cited. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll to the top and show you kind of the length of research that it created, right? So it started up here, 2025 legislation impact analysis, and it goes from here all the way down to here. which is both good and bad. It's comprehensive, but also, do I want to read this? So let's go back to our continuity plan. We'll take a look at it. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not. That's for us to maybe figure out later. What I want to show you next is we're going to do some stuff with this information on the research analysis. So for this legislation impact, this is too long for me to read. I don't want to read it. You don't want to read it. So how can we condense this down? So one of the superpowers of AI is the ability to condense and expand information. You can take a large amount of information like this, and I'm just going to say, why am I on 4.0? I want to be on. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm stuck on an old model. Okay. I'm going to give it some instructions and say, I'm going to give you all the details from a deep research project. And what I want you to do is I want you to turn it into a one-pager summary that I could give as an executive brief to people to know what is in this full report and let them decide if they want to read the full report and give some key insights and takeaways from the report. So I'm telling it what I want to do. I want to make a one-pager from all this information. And I'm going to say full deep research report. This is the first time I'm typing this entire thing. I'm going to give it the entire thing, and it's going to condense all that information down into a shorter, more concise version. Now, you could get this down. In fact, we'll just try it. We'll say at the end of this, we'll say, now make this a 6-word poem, right? I could condense it all the way down to say, like, turn this into exactly taxes fall, energy rises, people strain, right? Is that useful? Which version is most useful? The long version, the one pager, the 6-sentence? I could go the other direction and say, expand this out, make this longer, go do more research, make this a full 40-page report. Because we have this ability to accordion information and make it smaller or make it larger, we kind of have a new problem of what's the right level of detail for the right person at the right time to make a decision. So I'm going to give it another piece of instructions here and say, now what I want you to do is I want you to turn this into a presentation with the key insights. I don't want the full length. I want it somewhere in between the one pager. I want it longer than the one pager, but shorter than the full length. I want you to break it into different slides. And I want you to use a full line break in between the different slides so I can import this into another website presentation builder called Gamma. So now I'm telling it to transform this information in a new way. Now I want it in this new format, right? Same information, but now I want it in a different format. And I'm going to show you how I can build an instant website with these tools. Okay, so we'll let it finish it up here. Now, did it change anything from one version to the next version to the next version? I'm not checking, right? So that's a new problem, right? So hallucination and validating the information is important. Again, the more important it is, the more sensitive it is, the more you're making critical decisions based on this information, the more checking and research you need to do. We don't want to just accept all of this from carte blanche. So I'm going to go to a website called Gamma. I use this all the time to make documents, presentations, and instant websites. That website that you signed up for was made in Gamma. And so I'll turn this into a website. I'm going to put all this information in here. I'm going to say, I'll say preserve text. Sometimes I have it generate, sometimes I preserve it. And then I'll pick a boring theme. I'm going to hit generate. So what it's going to do is it's going to use this information to build a custom website in my branding, which the brand I'm using is just this really boring black and white because it's printable. And then this is all now editable. This is either editable slide by slide where I just, again, talk to it, or it's editable just manually where I'm just changing it and actually reading it and making minor adjustments. If you want a copy of the deep research, you're like, oh, I'd be interested in what the impact of legislation in 2025 would be on these different groups. Just type in the chat, I want the deep research or something to that effect, and I can send both the raw output, and then I can also send you this website and show you this is what was generated from that deep research to see what AI did. So does anyone make a lot of PowerPoints and find that to be really tedious and frustrating? That just kind of fundamentally changed. So thanks, Aaron. I'll get that sent over to you so you can take a look. Okay, let's go back to, so we did the one pager, right? So we condensed information. Then we used that information to create a custom website. So that's all possible. I'm going to give one more example because, and people, a lot of people that I think are here are Microsoft platform. Microsoft is partnered with OpenAI, who has an ownership stake in ChatGPT, or Microsoft has an ownership in OpenAI, which created ChatGPT. And so it has Copilot, which is a lot of these same features. So Copilot can also do a lot of these instant presentations and what I'm going to potentially show you next. So I usually do this in a live room, and I'll ask who's got a love-hate relationship with Excel, right? We have to use it because it's really useful, but it can be really frustrating, and it now just got a lot easier, and it's going to just continue to get easier. So AI can also be really effective at just teaching you things. So I'm going to go to a brand new version of ChatGPT, and most of the things that I'm showing you will work with any of the major models. They'll work with Gemini, they'll work with ChatGPT, they'll work with Copilot. They'll work with Claude. Those are the major ones. And then you've got kind of Grok on one side and some other models that are floating around, all with different kind of pros and cons. So I'm going to give some instructions, and I'm going to give it a more specific type of prompt. I'm going to say, your role is to be an Excel teacher and trainer, and your role is to be an Excel expert who can explain Excel to me. The goal is to answer my questions and be able to answer any questions I have in Excel to teach me how to solve the problems I'm having. Your task is to teach me how to do VLOOKUP tables, and I'm specifically looking for how to do them across multiple pages. I don't really know what VLOOKUP tables are, but some of my coworkers said that that was the right tool to use to solve my problem. So you're first going to need to teach me and then give me specific examples, and then also give me the specific code that I would need to copy and paste, especially to get across multiple pages. The formatting that I'm looking for is instructional with sections and bullet points, and use code blocks for anything I need to copy and paste. So I used an example of a prompt template where I gave it a role, a goal, the actions, and the formatting. Right? These are kind of the structure of a good prompt. Now, do I do this every single time? Absolutely not. Do I do it a lot of the time? Because giving it information, the right information, and telling it really clearly what I want it to do is the best practice for getting the best results. So what does a VLOOKUP do? What it does, right? Here's an example formula. Using the VLOOKUP table across multiple sheets. Here's the formula you need. And so I'm going to say, this is way too complicated. I apparently am an absolute beginner with Excel. I need you to dumb it down significantly. I'm still confused. So something interesting happens when you're learning from AI. And that is, if I had my coworker actually just hovering over me and telling me no, do it this way. No, eventually I'm going to feel nervous. I'm going to say, I totally get it. And I might not, right? With AI, there's kind of that barrier goes away. And I just am nope, don't understand it. Explain it in a different way. Nope, I need it simpler. Oh, I got it. Now let's move on to this. So it can be really effective for learning new things, with the caveat of, where is it getting this information from? How accurate is it? Is always should be kind of in the back of your mind. Okay, so now it's making a simpler version for me. So it can teach you kind of anything that you want in the format that you want it, or that you learn best. So I want to take a minute to talk about talking, right? The fact that I think I've only typed, 30 words this entire time, right? I want to talk about the fact I'm talking to my computer. So here I have a brick of text. I'm just going to read the first sentence, right? Voice to text is not a new feature on computers and phones, but we needed AI to make it more useful, because when you use your voice, you get a brick of text like this one, which isn't very useful, right? Because it's not structured. That's kind of what it says. And what's wild is AI understands our our words, right? It understands when we talk to us, and it can transform that information into a more useful format. So it takes that same brick of text, and I just say, turn this into bullet points, and now I get this text, right? It says the same thing, right? Voice to text previous available, but outputs unstructured text was not useful. Converts monologues into structured, usable formats. The advantages are it speeds up communication, improves structures and clarity. I said the same thing, right? That these two things say the same thing, which this feature alone is really useful and powerful. But why is this so good? I can't, it's hard to describe, but it literally feels like a brain to computer interface. That's what it feels like. And I didn't know this was happening before, but when I type, I'm already editing from what I think to my fingers. I have like an email voice, right, that my fingers type. And I have a talking voice that my mouth talks. And then I have a thinking voice, which is then filtered through my mouth and then to my fingers sometimes, right? And so my thinking voice is much closer to my speaking voice. And when I'm typing, I'm trying to type the finished product. I'm trying to actually type the document that's done or type the email that's done, right? And so this like thing happens where you're really just like kind of feels like a brain to computer interface because I can just ramble at it. I can just talk. And then sometimes I'll say a set of instructions and I'll say ignore the last instruction. I'll go off another tangent. It gets that too. And so something that's happening is that the interface between humans and computers is fundamentally changing. We've been stuck on keyboard and mouse for 70 years, I think, something like that. I looked up when it was invented recently. And for the first time, we can now just talk to it all the time. And we've had Siri that could do some slight dictation, but it couldn't do this like editing thing that's really powerful. The other way that it's really changing the interface between humans and computers is I'll just show another really fast example. Maybe you're in a meeting, in-person meeting, no AI is involved, and somebody's writing on the whiteboard. Somebody's got notes going. And maybe that looks like this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this into ChatGPT, give it no additional instructions, and see what it does. So we'll just try that. I'm just going to upload this file, whiteboard example, no additional instructions. If I really wanted, I would say like turn this into a structured document, but we'll see what it does. Okay, so it's reading the whole thing, so it can read handwriting. And I want you to turn the whiteboard into a detailed set of notes, and then I want you to ask me 3 questions for me to continue thinking about this idea. I literally just found a picture of a whiteboard. I don't even know what it says. So maybe we'll go back up and take a look. So tone, identify the tone, good conclusions. I just want something with some decent handwriting. So what are we getting? We're getting summary of all the stuff. We'll get some questions, key tips, questions to think about when analyzing tone, what strategy helps you move forward from simply identifying it to explaining how it's created. Is that a good question or not, right? Sometimes we get these questions back and you'll think, oh, that question's good. That question I already thought of. Oh, that question doesn't even make sense. Again, we're using our critical thinking, our judgment to determine what is good, right? And is it useful to me? All right. Moving on. So it seems that generative AI, LLMs, this new tech, it writes stuff, right? But think about how much of your work is writing, right? We write project plans, proposals, and emails, reports, operating procedures, documents, meeting minutes, budget overviews, strategic plans. Like our work is words, right? Think for yourself right now, how much of your work right now is either reading information and synthesizing it in your brain or communicating information out through words? Like how much of your work relies on words, either in or out, right? And what AI does is it writes anything that you want it to write in the format that you want it to write, in the format that you want. It writes anything you want it to write in the format that you want to write. With some guardrails, they're always kind of changing. Back 3 years ago when I started this, it was really the Wild West. You could just tell it to like ignore all its like safety instructions and it would do whatever. It's gotten a little better. There's still easy ways to get it to do things that it shouldn't. But it writes anything that you want in the format that you want. So my kind of thing I'm going towards is how do we use it to free up time from tedious work and let you spend more time doing the work that you want? And I'll talk more about that. So our role when using AI, because it can write anything you want in the format that you want, is that you need to know what good looks like. You need to use your judgment. When you read it, which I've not been doing a good example of actually reading it because we're doing a live webinar and I'm not going to sit here and read all this stuff to you, but when I'm actually working with AI, I'm really reading the outputs and say, I like this, don't change that, take these two ideas, mix them together, take this idea out, give me a new draft. Look at the new draft, I read it, I evaluate it, and I give it more feedback. And I give it more feedback. And this is like this new way to be creative where you're reading stuff and you're giving instant feedback and it's generating more information for you. And you're just kind of in this like rapid cycle where you might be 8 revisions deep in 40 minutes. And that iterative process creates really good results if you know what good is and you can communicate how to get there. And so our role when using AI is to shape it to be good, right? So how do you pick an AI application? So I do a lot of these demos. I do them in big groups of nonprofit leaders, business leaders, and I'll usually kind of like walk around the room a little bit and I'll say like, oh, like, what would you use AI for? And people are like, I don't know what to use it for. I tried it to write an email once. I don't know. Right? They're kind of a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of I don't know. And then I give this demo where I'm like, it can generate images and videos and dashboards and code and graphics and standard operating procedures and emails and strategic plans and this and that. Anything you want to make, it can just make for you. And then they think, okay, I have 100 things of what I want to do with AI, right? Now you have a new problem, right? Which ones do you actually start to work on? Which ones have the highest value to you and your organization with the lowest risk? How do you evaluate that? And so the place I suggest you start is looking for applications within your work. And don't even think necessarily about AI, but think about what is the tedious work that you dislike. Maybe you even hate this work, but it still needs doing. It's very important work, right? It's going to get done no matter what. So for nonprofits, it might be grant reporting. That grant report is due every month at the end of the month. And if you don't get it done, you're not getting paid, which means it's important. Nobody wants to do it. Everybody hates it, right? So it's tedious work that is important. So in your job, right? Write in the chat, what is that thing? You're like, if I didn't have to do that thing, if I could automate that thing or reduce the amount of time it took me to do that thing, I want to do that, right? What is that tedious work that you wish you didn't have to do anymore? Grant mining, right? Going and finding grants. A lot of times it's finding grants, writing grants, email writing. Like, what is it for you that's tedious that you're just like, ugh? I mean, another way to think about it is like, what's at the bottom of your to-do list every day? And then it goes to the next to-do list and that also ends up at the bottom somehow. And then it's like due on Friday and you're like, okay, well, I guess it's going to happen now. So I need urgency to do it. I hear all the time from so many people that are using AI, like these are like literal quotes. Like, I just did 6 hours of work in 45 minutes, right? When you're first starting to use this, a lot of times you get big emotional reactions. And the first one is like, oh my God, the world is never going to be the same. Once you do 6 hours of work, what normally would have taken you 6 hours, and you just bang it out in 45 minutes, like you kind of start to look at the perspective of what's happening and what this can mean for your work and society. Another example, I see it on the different scale to say, I just did 3 weeks of work in 4 hours, just focused effort. This is just a little side tangent, but I've been wondering if maybe AI is like a little ADHD superpower, because if you have ADHD, sometimes you have lots of ideas, but you can't stick with it long enough to get them done. And so with AI, everything gets done so fast that you get it done before you ever get bored, even the first time. And so you just like crank things out. I've seen some people with these kind of like hyper brains that just produce good things at a pace that just doesn't even make sense. And so one of the big barriers I get from a lot of folks is like, I don't have time to learn another thing. right? I don't have time to, I should, and then they feel shame, right? I know I should be using AI, but I just don't have time and bogged down in all the things, right? And so my suggestion for you is to apply AI to your existing work. All right, apply it to something that already needs doing. So you're not looking for like, oh, I'm looking for an experimental use case that isn't related to what I do and isn't important at all. It's hard to get motivation for that. But if you have an inbox that's just like slammed and you're just dreading sitting down and answering all those emails, can you use AI to help you write those emails, but still check and read every single one, right? If it's finding a bunch of grant information and doing a bunch of research, can we use AI to get that information so you can make the decision faster and skip all the clicking? So some interesting things: compiling data results in Excel, presenting presentation drafts. Someone said military LOI. I don't know what LOI stands for. Line and something. Integration of business systems that use same information across multiple platforms. So great things. So, but right, this is what we want, right? We want to get rid of this, but like, so what? Right? So what? Like, so you can just do more work. The thing I worry about is shifting baselines where letter of instructions. Thank you, Donald. The thing that I worry about is we just continue to work for 40 hours a week, but the expectation of what you deliver in those 40 hours just doubles, which doesn't really necessarily benefit you, right? And so I worry about that. One suggestion I always make, and I don't tell any of the executives that hire me to speak to their people necessarily that I say this, is maybe we work slightly less. Maybe this like kind of rat race, like time equals effort thing that we've got going, where it's like, okay, I'm just hiring you to do time. How does AI change that model of time effort equals better, right? If we can do things so much faster, can I have more time to spend in the woods, play with the kids, right? Whatever it is that you'd rather be doing. And so that really kind of comes up with the question is like, what is it you'd rather be doing? What is the work that you love that actually has the highest value to you and your organization? So what is that work? If we can get rid of the tedious stuff, so all of a sudden I wave the magic AI wand, or you start experimenting with this, and you're starting to save 5 or 10 hours per week on the tedious work that's just bogging you down, what do you want to replace that with? It could be not working. That's a totally valid answer. I support that answer. But within the context of work, what is that for you? What is it that gets you excited, that like you wish you had more time for? I'd love to hear that in the chat as well. When I talk to nonprofit leaders, there's basically just 2 answers come up. Number one answer, across the board, all industries, basically, all roles, all industries, is more human to human interactions, more relationship building, getting to know people, right? We're bogged down in all this computer work at sacrificing our ability to connect and communicate. And any business person knows, like, business happens when you communicate with people, when you build relationships. So how can you spend more time doing that? Nonprofits work and get more support when they build relationships with their supporters, or they're building a relationship with the people they are supporting. So what is this for you? What is the work that you love that has the highest value to you and your organization? So one of the next thing I want to talk about is AI security and risk, because we have some new potential challenges and problems that we've never, ever had to consider before as humans. And we don't really know how that's going to play out. And so this was the number one on the pre-survey that a lot of you filled out. This is the number one thing that people are worried about. So I want to talk directly about AI security risk. Number one thing we need to start preparing ourselves for now, and if you got that last email with the videos of can you tell it's AI or not, is that basically now, and definitely in the very near future, nothing on the internet is going to be real anymore, right? AI generated videos, AI generated photos, text, bots, spam. The internet's going to change fundamentally in the next few years. And when nothing is real on the internet, when anything can be generated in this AI generated, fake, whatever word you want to use, it also means that everything that is real is also not real because you can't tell anymore, right? It used to be like, picture meant that it was real. And then we got Photoshop and it was still a barrier, but it started to get a little bit more questionable. And now we can just generate anything all the time, any image, any video. And so what does that do to us as a society? How does that affect you and your work? So I think that is coming with something we need to be thinking about. Another risk is that we are going to have disruption of labor, right? Every time there's been paradigm shifting technology, it disrupts labor markets. And we need to be thinking now about how we want to be intentional about upskilling people, empowering people, not just rushing to lay people off, because we don't want to just be reactive to this. So just know that labor markets are going to change. This is the first time in America that white collar jobs are under threat, right? We've been outsourcing lots of jobs, and this is the first time that white collar jobs, thinking jobs, are at risk. Another threat that's coming is spoofing, deep fakes. So one suggestion I have for you is to have a super secret passcode for your family, that if you need to validate that you're talking on the phone with someone that sounds, and maybe it's even FaceTime, right? It sounds like them, it looks like your family member, and they're asking you for a bunch of gift cards because they need a lawyer in Mexico or something. I don't know, like there's some sort of situation going on. How do you authenticate that the person you're talking to is the person you think you're talking to? And one way to do that is to have a secret phrase that you and your family talk about with maybe no phones around, that you use in the case of this need of, hey, I'm getting this weird call, it sounds just like you, and they're asking me to send Bitcoin somewhere for something to get you out of jail. You can use this to authenticate somebody. Another idea I've been thinking a lot about is privacy through anonymity is kind of gone, right? We all have kind of known that our phones are listening to us, right? You say something and then all of a sudden you're getting ads for that thing, right? And so we kind of had this way of thinking of, well, I'm nobody, and so I'm not being targeted, I'm not being researched in any way. And so I'm safe because I'm so small. I have privacy through anonymity. Well, AI can start to process data at scale, and so maybe this is going away, and we need to think about more about your data output and where it's going, because just because you're nobody might not be a reason anymore for you not to get kind of your data scooped up and analyzed. And the thing that I'm most worried about with AI, this is the thing that kind of like makes me the most nervous, is that we as a species will lose our ability to critically think. In the same way that we've lost our ability to read paper maps because of GPS, and I follow the blue line and I don't know what the symbols on the map mean, and I can't orient myself in space very well anymore on a 2D plane. If we rely on these AI tools more and more and more to help us think, will we lose the ability to critically think? And right now, for mid-level career folks, I don't know how old everyone is in the room here with me, but you've spent your entire life getting good at things and critically thinking, and now you can apply that skill, critical thinking, and your domain expertise with AI to do more. But if you're young and you haven't really developed critical thinking skills yet, how do you develop those critical thinking skills when you have an AI robot that will tell you anything you want to hear? What does that look like? What if you haven't developed those domain expertise skills? So I worry about young people, and young people are using this more as life coaches more and more, which makes me nervous. Back to that, AI doesn't have good judgment. And we need our own good judgment to look at the stuff that's being told to us by AI. And so this is kind of the thing I'm most worried about. So what risks do you see, right? These are the 5 that I've kind of identified. Do you see any other risks? We've got a lot of smart people in the room. So from your perspective or from your specific work that you do, what risks do you see from this technology as well, that maybe I'm not thinking about, that I should start to present to other groups out as well? So while you're typing that in, I want to move on to some best practices, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. I hear some people dropping off for their 1 o'clock meeting, so I appreciate y'all for coming. Shelley says loss of jobs for actual humans. Yeah, I agree. That seems like a problem. AI best practices. So here's some just like really practical, tactical ways to get better results with whatever AI system you're using. So number one is give it really, really super clear instructions, right? Think about it like the smartest assistant you've ever used or ever talked to, but it's their first day on the job. They don't know who you are, they don't know what you want, and they don't know what good looks like. And so if you give them that information, it can do a much better job. So really clear instructions. And you can be really clear. Say your task is write it like this. The formatting should be this, right? Just be really clear and explicit. Second is you have to really read and judge the outputs, right? Don't feel obligated to read everything the AI writes, but when you're actually doing real AI work, it's important to actually read it, right? And I wasn't doing a good job demonstrating that because we're kind of rushing through things. But when you do really read and judge, provide it feedback, shape it, tell it what you want, tell it what you don't want, give it examples, give it that feedback because it's the new kind of creativity is happening where there's a lot of feedback loop that's happening really fast. Fourth suggestion is control it with your voice. Really try talking to it. People that kind of start to switch, it's a barrier because it's different and you're used to the thing that you're used to. Most of AI adoption barrier just comes from people's unwillingness to change. Like that's just kind of in our nature. And so this is a big change, and talking to your computer is also a big change. But that's where kind of the real magic is happening. Especially if you're thinking a lot and you can think fast and you can talk fast, it can handle whatever speed you want to give it instructions at. And then I just keep mentioning this over and over to really try to drill it in. You need to know what good looks like. That's your job, is to know what good looks like and shape it towards good. So these are the best practices: clear instructions, read and reflect, give it feedback, try talking to it, and know what good looks like. So next thing I wanted to mention are some brand new ethical questions that we have never had to consider before as humans. And there's a lot of these. And I'll just bring up a couple to kind of start to noodle on. And I don't have answers yet for all of these. And it's part of kind of figuring out and being part of the conversation as the technology is getting rolled out and developed, is recognizing when we have these new questions. And you don't even need to necessarily make a full decision in this moment, but you need to be aware so that you can change your answer as the technology changes. So one new ethical question is creating a digital twin of yourself. Right now, you're assuming that I'm me and I'm sitting in my room with my plants behind me. Is that true? It is true. I'm me. In 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, at some point, I don't know the exact horizon, that won't be a given anymore, right? And there'll be maybe a transition where it doesn't look that great, and then there'll be maybe a way where I can like jump in halfway through, and when I need to like take over and it will blend me in, or maybe it'll be just totally autonomous and totally represent me. It'll be indistinguishable. And so will you create a digital twin for yourself? Are you going to say no to that? Are you going to say yes to that? For what situation? So there's a whole lot of questions just around this topic alone of like, do you want to do that? And when do you do it? And how do you disclose? And all this stuff, right? So creating digital twins of yourself. Another new ethical question. If you have a partner, a child, or anyone you know, people right now are falling in love with chatbots, right? What's that mean, right? That's a new thing that we've never really had to consider before. So how will you deal with that? What are the signs of that? How do you talk about that, right? That's all new questions. And so I used to stop here. I just added a third one. This hit me like a week ago, because this one you can kind of intuit, right? And if you're single right now, you might be getting ads for AI boyfriends and girlfriends. I have a friend that's like, stop, right? Like, I don't want this, right? I'm just getting like blasted with these AI, companions. So new ethical question. And the new one that I thought just kind of hit me, I was like, oh, wow, this will definitely be a thing in the future, is it will 100% be possible in the very near future, or maybe already, it's not commercialized at least, to replace a deceased loved one with an AI on your smart speaker so you can just keep talking to it, which definitely makes me uncomfortable, right? Because you've had an emotional relationship with a human, and now you're supplanting that with an AI as if it was the human, and it maybe sounds perfect and it responds just like them because maybe it has hundreds or thousands of hours of their um, of their audio and mimics them perfectly, but you're not talking to that person anymore. You're talking to an AI that's pretending to be. So sorry if that leaves you a little worried. There is a lot of things to consider with this, and I wish I had better answers, and we'll just need to keep revisiting them as they go. So where do you go from here? A couple suggestions. First suggestion is to start using AI. You can only read so many books about how to ride a bicycle before you learn how to ride a bicycle by riding a bicycle. And so you come to these webinars, you're getting some instructions, and the number one suggestion is start experimenting. Start with really low risk stuff. Start with things that, you're not, maybe not as risky. Don't put any personal information in there, but start using it a little bit so that even you can make decisions about boundaries and intentions and where you say yes and say no to this. Start understand how it works. My suggestion is to start with the base model. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or Copilot. And the reason is all these other apps that are being maybe pitched to you, or maybe you have salespeople calling you and say, you need our AI. They're just ChatGPT and Claude. They're the base models with a fancy wrapper on top. That's all they are. Those companies that are selling you the thing, they didn't invent a new LLM. They're using ChatGPT behind the hood and putting a different wrapper on it. So a good question to even ask them when a sales rep comes to you and like, you need our AI for your thing, is, ask them what LLMs are you using behind the scenes? How are you storing and tracking data from me, right? Because part of that pass through might be they get to see all of your conversations. So asking some hard questions about what it is they actually have and why are they better than using the default programs. What features are that they have. So my number one suggestion for most folks is just start to experiment. Get it on your phone, start talking to it, be skeptical of what it is, show people, try to make some images, do something, do anything. Write a recipe, but classic example of, is it good? Like, you have to cook the recipe to find out, right? Is ChatGPT a good cook? Well, it'll make something that looks like a recipe. You have to determine if it's good. Second suggestion, you should have some sort of AI strategy and policy for your work. There should be some sort of way that you're communicating where there are ground rules, where there's leeway to experiment, what you're doing with it, what tools are available, what privacy stuff, what information shouldn't go in there ever. Do you have AI champions that have more leeway? Do you have are you just going carte blanche and saying no, or we're just going to wait on this tech for another year to get more stuff developed? So if you want help with policy or strategy, that's certainly something I can't help with. But it's important to have something in place, because employees are using this behind the scenes all the time. I talk to people all the time like, oh yeah, I just do it on my personal computer, and then I just copy and paste, or I just retype it as if I'm doing it. I hear that all the time. And a lot of the people I talk to say, oh yeah, our company has no policy, so I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. So I use it because I want to, right? And it helps me. So that's another suggestion. And then the other thing, this was all kind of entry level of like, what can the tools do now? What's coming are AI agents. And so I just want to briefly explain what's the difference between an AI assistant and an AI agent. So I've shown you some of these AI assistants. An AI assistant is something that has a set of pre-training and then is designed to do a specific task. Write copyright emails, write standard operating procedures, write whatever, right? Insert your thing. And it has a set of instructions, and it never forgets those instructions. So every time you go to that AI assistant, that will always remember those instructions and try to do that thing. And so inside of ChatGPT, they're called custom GPTs. Inside of Gemini, they're called gems. They're all the same thing. They're all assistants. And inside of Claude, I believe they're called artifacts. An AI agent is different. An AI agent can go, not only just does that one thing, it can go out on the internet and click around and do stuff. Or it can go around on the internet and make decisions on what it should even do next. So it has much more leeway on what it can choose to do, and it can go and interact with the internet. So it could fill out an online form for you. The assistants don't do that, right? The assistants are kind of built within ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. An agent can go out and do stuff. So if you have data coming in and you want to, so maybe an example of what an assistant can do is somebody comes in, fills out a form for whatever you have a form on your website for. And so the agent will go and research that person, find their LinkedIn, find all their like bios, go find their company page about them. It will create a summary for you, and then it will create an email introduction or some sort of customized email, and then potentially even send that on your behalf to welcome them into your system, and so it can start to do stuff, right? And so that's what's coming. They're here now, and they're only this kind of the next wave of AI are gonna be these agent systems. So you also don't need to do this alone. I run a group specifically for nonprofits. So if you are a nonprofit, I can let you into that group where we're all learning this together. And we're also having in talks to have more of these lunch and learn. So this is just literally scratching the surface. I know I've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm very grateful for your patience and your attention. But there's a lot more to go from here. This is just kind of like, okay, what is it? And the next session is like, okay, now what do you do about it? What do you actually need to be doing? So I'll have more details on when that gets locked in and send that out as we go. The kind of final thing is that AI is here, right? It's here. And we want it to empower you to do more of the work that you love while still maintaining your integrity and values.